New Moon. You know, the one where Bella gets horrifically dumped, goes into a horrendous depression, and then is rescued by the local wildlife. Hello everyone, today we are going to get back into the Twilight Saga, and I'm going to try to remember that I am focusing on Bella as a feminist protagonist, and also about the appeals of the love interests, of which there is little to none. I'm just gonna get straight into it because I've had a hell of a week and I would love nothing better than to have this discussion with you right now. I have nothing to say about the preface in this one. I don't even remember what it involves. So we'll go straight into chapter 1. Chapter 1 consists mostly of Bella being really dramatic about her birthday. She doesn't want to get any older. It's already giving sexism, but we'll get there. We see what her life is like after dating Edward for a bit. Bella tells us, "We had almost every class together now. It was amazing the favours Edward could get the female administrators to do for him. Just Nepo baby things, I guess. Like, could they not just be normal for 1 second and have at least one class away from each other so it wasn't completely fucked and weird? It's no wonder she reacts the way she does when he leaves." Spoiler alert, sorry about that. Bella has a job at some shop and it's irrelevant, but she mentions it at the beginning of this book and it literally just kind of never comes up again. It's not in a field that she's passionate about. Like, she doesn't get a job at the library, she gets a job at some like camping shop with Mike Newton. I think that Stephanie Meyer just wanted Bella to have a job so that she could continue this facade of the perfect American teenager, right? Because she does all the cooking and cleaning at home, but she also pays her own way in the house, you know? Charlie couldn't have asked for a more perfect daughter right now. So Bella's talking about her friends at school and she tells us that now that the quote-unquote older Cullens have graduated from school, Edward and Alice have come to sit at the table with her and her friends, but we all sat at the same table on the other side of an invisible line. That line dissolved on sunny days when Edward and Alice always skipped school, and then the conversation would swell out effortlessly to include me. Yeah, this conversation would swell out effortlessly because your friends are making the effort. God damn it, Bella! Like, she literally just ignores her friends if Edward and Alice are in school, and then when Edward and Alice are mysteriously gone, which nobody questions, by the way, even after all this time. And just because they're gone, that's when she lowers herself to hang out with her other friends, bro. It's fucked. It's the way that all of her friends let her get away with this as well. Like, nobody except, like, this Lauren girl ever has anything to say about it. She's meant to be the bully, but she's just the realest bitch. Edward and Bella go home from school and watch Romeo and Juliet together. Bella sighs and asks, "Do you want me to watch this alone?" Edward says, "No, I'll mostly be watching you anyway." His fingers trace patterns across the skin of my arm, raising goosebumps. "Will you cry?" "Probably," I admitted, "if I'm paying attention." "I won't distract you then." Later on, we find out it's because Edward thinks it's funny that Bella gets emotional over these silly things, but Edward is such a creep that I didn't realise that. Like, I just thought that he liked to see Bella cry. I just thought that was something that he was into. So that should tell you something about the overall character of Edward Cullen that we're dealing with here. Chapter 2. Somebody finally tries to seriously eat Bella, and it's Jasper. Absolute king. Bella spends some quality time with Carlisle while he stitches her up after Edward throws her into a glass table, makes everything 1,000 times worse. And while explaining his backstory and the reason why Carlisle is a doctor and stuff, Bella says, "You try very hard to make up for something that was never your fault. What I mean is, it's not like you asked for this. You didn't choose this kind of life, and yet you have to work so hard to be good." Is this more Christian propaganda? Is this, we are born with original sin and so we must work our entire lives to go against that original sin? Am I thinking too much into this? No! They discuss the soul and whether Carlisle thinks that vampires have one. Famously, Edward does not believe that. He doesn't think there's anything for them after death. Carlisle thinks something else. He says, "I look at my son, his strength, his goodness, the brightness that shines out of him, and it only fuels that hope, that faith more than ever. How could there not be more for one such as Edward?" And Bella nods in fervent agreement. Listen, I've just written, tell me why Ed is so good. Like, what has he done? What about this man is so pure and Labrador-like that these people just believe in God all of a sudden just from being in his presence? I don't think he's that stand-up of a guy, personally. But even if you take out all of the things that Mayer unintentionally did with his character, he still isn't, he isn't this great stand-up guy. He's ignorant and standoffish. He doesn't help anybody around him. And him and his family, like, actively stay out of the way of bad vampires who kill people. I don't think that Edward is doing anything for the good of humanity. And so I don't know what these guys are talking about. So obviously Edward is in a fucking mood because his brother tried to kill Bella and it's all Bella's fault. And I know that's not what he's thinking, but can we listen to the abuse codedness in this next section and talk about how some of the girlies talking about how Edward Cullen was an abusive piece of shit might have had something to say. Esme and Carlisle both said a quiet goodnight. I could see them stealing quick glances at their impassive son, much like I was. So Esme and Carlisle, they obviously know that something's up and that Edward is about to have fucking conniptions about this. Bella says, it was a relief to be outside. I hurried past the lanterns and the roses, now unwelcome reminders. Entire party spoiled because Edward's in a mood. Edward kept pace with me silently. He opened the passenger side for me and I climbed in without complaint. On the dashboard was a big red ribbon stuck to the new stereo. I pulled it off, throwing it to the floor. As Edward slid into the other side, I kicked the ribbon under my seat. There's this big present for her in the car stereo, right? And she doesn't even want Edward to see the bow because she doesn't want to give him any kind of a trigger for him to start going off at her, right? This is what it sounds like. This is kind of not how it is, but it kind of is in a way. Like, just because he's going off in a melodramatic, emo way doesn't mean that he's not going off. He didn't look at me or the stereo. Neither of us switched it on, and the silence was somehow intensified by the sudden thunder of the engine. He drove too fast down the dark serpentine lane. And I know that Edward always drives too fast, okay? But how many times have you had an argument with your boyfriend and then you've got in the car and he has driven like an absolute maniac? She did not need to put that here. We all know that Edward drives too fast. To point it out makes us think that he's driving faster than normal, even for him, right? So it just makes it seem like he's fucking angry and putting their lives in danger, dude. Bella goes on. The silence was making me insane. Say something, I finally begged as he turned onto the freeway. What do you want me to say? He asked in a detached voice. I don't even have to comment on that bit. The girls know what the fuck I'm talking about. They start to argue and Edward brings up Mike Newton, which is like, Bella has never expressed any kind of an interest in Mike Newton, and at this point it's like an obsession on Edward's part, the amount that he brings him up, considering how irrelevant he is to Bella's life. So of course Bella says, how did Mike Newton end up in this conversation? And Edward says, Mike Newton would be a hell of a lot healthier for you to be with, he growled. Bella responds, I'd rather die than be with Mike Newton. Now she goes on to say, I'd rather die than be with anyone but you, which was the sentiment behind it. But wow, that is a serious L for Mike, my guy. Like, this bitch would absolutely rather die than go anywhere near that man. And I just feel really bad for him, to be honest. To be fair, Edward does say, don't be melodramatic, please, which is rich coming from him. But I do love it when he puts Bella down like that. So big up Ed in this moment. Big Ed W. Chapter 3, The Breaker. Edward spends a dumb amount of time just freezing Bella out, and it's really, really mean. Like, she clearly knows that something is wrong and he's not letting on and just clearly going through the motions with her, and that's just so awful of him, no matter what else happens or no matter why he was doing it. I don't care. They shouldn't have been attached at the hip anyway in the way that they were, and a bit of space could probably do them some fucking good, but not like this, Ed, not like this. When he does eventually work up the courage to take her out into the woods and dump her horrifically, everything he says has like this double meaning, or like he later admits that he lied to make it easier for her. Easier. Because no way it was this easy for Bella. I still think everything he said was just dickish. Like, it was horrible. It was just a stupid thing for him to do, and it was just, everything Edward does during this book just feels really melodramatic for the sake of causing havoc, to be honest. Not from Edward wanting to cause havoc, but from Maya wanting to cause havoc. I think it was a dick move. Like, after Edward and Bella break up, he like zooms back to her house and takes all of like the stuff that might remind her of him. And well, I think maybe a little bit of that, like, it's still an invasion of privacy and it should be up to Bella anyway, but like, I think the most dick move was taking the photos of them together. I think that was just really shitty of him, because like, memories are just important, bro, and you just took that away from her. You like took away the option for her to heal at her own pace, bro, and it's just like, stop, dude. Right before chapter 4 is the bit where Maya just puts a different month on each page. It's like 4 months of nothing. I mentioned my friend who I used to read these with in school, and I distinctly remember us having a conversation where we admitted that the Twilight books had made us cry. We were both laughing at ourselves, and she kind of said, well, which bit made you cry? And I told her, but her bit that made her cry was this bit where it was just 4 months of nothing. I think a lot of people related to this bit because it's like, it's I can admit a fairly good representation visually of how depression is. I'll save telling you what my cry-worthy moment was until we get there. In 4 months, Bella hasn't even spoken to her friends once, and Mike still asks her if she's working every Friday, even though she always does the shift. It's like really sad how much effort her friends put in with her when she has just given them absolutely nothing ever. It makes me really sad. After Bella's been in this like catatonic state for some time, Charlie threatens to send her away, and because she wants to remain in Forks just in case Edward comes back, she decides to make some effort into appearing like a real human girl again. She makes some plans with Jessica and suggests that they go to watch a scary film because she doesn't want to watch a romantic film because that might make her too sad. Okay, that's relatable. This next bit where Jessica sounds confused by the fact that Bella wants to watch a zombie film. Bella says, I tried to remember if I like scary movies, but I wasn't sure. It's just too extreme, bro. I get that the book is like trying to emulate how this is what I assume it's trying to do anyway. Forgive me if I'm giving Stephanie Meyer too much credit, but I believe it's trying to emulate the way a breakup feels to a teen, right? Because it feels like the most massive thing ever at the time. I just feel like it goes way beyond the point of being believable. Just to not be able to remember simple facts about yourself, like what you like, and the fact that she can't listen to any music whatsoever, otherwise it reminds her of Edward. It's too much. It's just too much. Please behave. Bella goes to watch this zombie movie and she identifies more with the zombie than with the girl. And she says, it was depressing to realize that I wasn't the hero anymore, that my story was over. Oh look guys, it's everybody's favorite prop. The sexist bullshit klaxon. I find it sexist that Mayer thinks that just because the man has exited Bella's life, that means that she can't have her own adventure anymore, that she can't have a story, that she's just some background character. Not even that, but some grotesque zombie monster without a man. Get away. Feminist icon, my ass, man. What the fuck? What is going on? I take this fucking... Jacob's not even in the story yet, girl. Take the hood off. This is also the chapter where Bella starts having hallucinations of Edward. In the book, it's only auditory hallucinations. I know that in the film, they make it visual, obviously, because it's a visual medium. What the fuck are those? I think Bella attempts to explain it at the end of the book, if I remember correctly. However, I don't remember. And so it just makes Bella look fucking crazy, dude. She just lost it for a minute there. Nobody ever mentioned it again. And I think, like, why do I not get that same grace from people? You know what I mean? Chapter 5 is when Jacob enters the picture. And, like, I do actually swear to you right now that my only notes on chapter 5 is, you're telling me Jacob doesn't say, Bella, where the hell have you been, Loca? I don't know why, but, like, I was convinced that that was going to happen when she, like, turned up at his house again with the bikes. And I just didn't. And it was like, Mandela effect moment, bro. Chapter 6. Bella immediately latches on to Jake and starts forming a codependent relationship with him, akin to the one that she had with Edward, right? But with a lot less moaning and a lot more laughter, which is quite nice. It's really annoying that Bella compares Edward and Jacob to the moon and sun, respectively, because it's just something that got done in every fucking love triangle at the time in a book. Like, one of them would be moody and emo and he'd be the moon, and the other one would be bright and bubbly and bouncy and he'd be the sun. And I don't know whether it was derived from Twilight, but it's definitely something that became very tiresome very quickly, okay? We want a little diversity in our men, guys. It's okay for men to be diverse. Come on, it's the year of our Lord 2024, okay? It's just nowhere near as intense as the relationship with her and Edward, and I think that that might have been a lot of the appeal for some people. Not my younger self, obviously. I wanted something madly intense where the two of us were obsessed with each other, but, you know, as I've come to grow older, I realise that that's just really not a healthy dynamic. I can also see why people like Charlie. He is a bit of a non-entity in the first book, however, he's been a really good dad at the beginning of New Moon so far. He went looking for her in the woods all night and he insisted on carrying her as soon as Sam found her, despite the fact that she was a little bit too heavy for him, because that's his daughter, it's his responsibility. He suggests taking her to therapy, and he, like, is happy when he sees her happy with Jake. I just find the dynamic really sweet here. The lack of Edward in the narrative allows for other characters to just be more. Just get him out. So I actually kind of enjoyed chapter 7 of New Moon. I said at the beginning of Twilight, when we were trying to figure out, like, who Edward was, and he was, like, being creepy and stalking Bella and being all, like, bipolar with her, that Stephanie Meyer could have written a really good horror story out of this, and that she had some really good horror elements, and that Edward was actually coming across as quite scary. It's the same again in chapter 7 of New Moon, with Jacob being afraid of Sam Yulee on the reservation and his, like, cults, his gang of boys, who, like, all of the elders in the little community, like, respect them and think that they're doing good for the place, but Jacob sees that there's something, like, weird, not right about them, and when his friends get invited into the group, they stop talking to him, and so he's scared that he's going to get indoctrinated into this cult next, and it's going to change him as a person. When you don't know what's going on, it's actually, like, really effectively scary, and you do feel fear for Jake and like the mystery is there, right? I can see it. Unfortunately, we all know that this just does not continue. I feel like Steph just really missed out on an opportunity here for herself in not writing a horror book. And maybe it wouldn't have been as good if she had, but I feel like if she tried, maybe, you know, we would be living in a different universe right now, bro, where it wasn't Twilight that Stephanie Meyer was famous for, but some lover, stalker, killer, vampire murder mystery. I don't know. In chapter 8, Bella starts to learn how to ride the motorcycles that she picked up off the side of the road and enlisted Jake to help her with. They're all fixed up now and she's ready for her lessons, and they go out onto like an abandoned stretch of road or whatever, and she gets on the bike. Listen, nobody ever asserted that Bella was a genius, okay, but there is a certain level of intelligence implied when you say that a girlie likes the classics, okay? But listen to this. Bella is on the bike and she's hallucinating about Edward, so maybe she is a little bit distracted, okay, but not to the point of this idiocy, where she says, "It distracted me enough from the speed to realise that the road was starting a slow curve to the left and I was still going straight. Jacob hadn't told me how to turn." Bella, I will give you one fucking guess. Just guess. Just why you're on the bike anyway. And you know that you're gonna crash if you don't try something. Just take a wild fucking guess as to what turns the bike. The girl drives a truck. It's not like she's never drove anything before in her life. And I can guarantee that she's been on an actual push bike before, surely. I mean, she might have fallen off it, but she's definitely had bike. I'm getting so pressed about this, but she's definitely been on a bike before, girl. I am so sure. Like, I could ask anyone. I could ask a 5-year-old, how do you turn a motorbike? And they'd probably have a good fucking idea. I don't know what Stephanie Meyer was trying to achieve by putting this in here, but she just makes Bella look like the world's biggest idiot, honestly. Anyway, she don't figure it out and she falls off and nearly dies, who cares? In chapter 9, Bella ends up on the double date with Mike Newton and Jacob, which really just feels like such a fan fiction situation, right? Like, oh no, we were meant to be going on a group date, but now everybody cancelled and it's just the two guys who like me. Whose hand am I gonna hold in the cinema? Oh no! It's so convoluted, right? And I think the thing that makes it boring is the fact that obviously we know that Bella's not interested in Mike, and it is on this date that Bella tells Jake that she's never gonna love him, essentially. Like, she turns around and she's like, I'm in love with Edward, and I'm always gonna be in love with Edward, and I only think about you as a friend, and that will never change. And Jake's like, I don't believe you, bro. I'm going to continue to push you and push you to be in a relationship with me because I feel like that's what I deserve. No, that's not what he says, but he may as well have done. Honestly, reading about all the bits with Bella moping about the house on her own, or moping about the fields or the trees or the high school or her job on her own, really, really a slog, really very depressing, much too melancholic for me. However, I guess I do have to admit that I do enjoy the scenes where she is with Jake. I feel like they are actually, as much as I don't think I would be having fun in this situation, you can tell that the characters are having fun. And they just definitely, I feel, have a lot more natural chemistry, I guess, than her and Edward do. Just because I'm not a fan of Edward's intensity. I said it before and I'll say it again. Not me turning into a Jacob girly before my very own eyes. Wait till the next book. We're not there yet. Right before chapter 10 is when Jacob does in fact get inducted into the cult. As we know, he is now a werewolf. He's gone through his chain. Bella doesn't know this. And obviously Jake's gone missing because he's meant to be keeping this werewolf thing a secret and he's not meant to be close to Bella anymore like that. But Bella's very concerned, okay? Bella is concerned about Jacob's safety and about the state of their friendship. And so Bella says, Jacob didn't call. The first time I called, Billy answered and told me that Jacob was still in bed. I got nosy, checking to make sure that Billy had taken him to a doctor. Because the story was that Jacob had a fever, right? Billy said he had, but for some reason I couldn't nail down. I didn't really believe him. I called again several times a day for the next 2 days, but no one was ever there. Right? So first of all, Bella just immediately turns stalker, okay? She's calling him every day, multiple times a day, and this is just not a healthy situation to be in, regardless of how worried you are. Just the rudeness of their first phone call, the fact that, like, she's speaking to this kid's father, and she's like, did you take him to a doctor? I don't fucking believe you. It's like, dude, pull out of this kid's affairs right now, okay? But you've literally been hanging out for like 2 weeks. Leave him alone, the kid's sick. Continuing in her stalker arc, you know, she learned from the best, Mr. EC. Bella makes Charlie ring Billy, Jacob's dad, because they're friends, right? And she's like, drumming her fingers against the table and humming and sighing because Charlie's trying to have, you know, a good old chit chat with his mate, as you do when you ring up and, you know, you don't want him to know that you're only ringing up because your daughter is a fucking weird psycho stalker. He's like, oh, the conversation seemed to go on forever without Jacob being mentioned. It seems that Harry had been in the hospital, some kind of test for his heart. And then she goes immediately back on to talking about Jacob and talking about how she can't glean much from the conversation about what's going on, and she's impatiently waiting for Charlie to get off the phone. No more thought for Harry, who's this older guy who's had something wrong with his heart. And, you know, we all know that Harry does go on to die. So it does just, for me, show Bella's complete lack of, like, respect for anyone who isn't a mythological creature. You know, for anybody who doesn't immediately affect her life, she doesn't give a shit. She's just not bothered that Harry, this old man, is sick and could possibly die. She's bothered about the fact that Jacob is screening her call. Bella keeps calling and calling and calling, and eventually Billy answers her and he says, Bella, for fuck's sake, Jake's not ill anymore and he's gone out. He doesn't want to fucking talk to you, bitch. He doesn't say that, but the sentiment is there. Bella says, Jacob was better, but not well enough to call me. He was out with friends. I was sitting home, missing him, more every hour. I was lonely, worried, bored, perforated, and now also desolate as I realised that the week apart had not had the same effect on him. Bitch! I wouldn't want to go out with you either after all of this stalking nonsense. Like, imagine if Jacob had actually been ill and the entire time he was trying to recover from this illness, Bella was just ringing and acting like a complete psychopath. You would want to distance yourself from her, and the fact that Bella can't see this, the bitch is fucking delulu. As well as this, it is really possessive, and, like, you know, he is allowed with the friends. Like, maybe when he got better, he wanted to go and see his friends from the res because he's been hanging out with you non-stop for the last 2 weeks. Okay, maybe he missed them. He's allowed other friends, Bella. Stop being so possessive and weird. So Charlie shares this sentiment and he's like, Bella, I don't want you falling into a depressive hole again because another man has abandoned you because you're shit. So why don't you go out with some of your other friends, because they're going to think you've forgotten about them. You've been spending so much time with Jake. And Bella's like, I smiled and nodded as if I heard what my other friends thought. Bitch. Bella does consider calling some of her other friends, like Jessica, but then she says that Jessica's gone over to the dark side because she's not as interested in Bella now that Bella's basically abandoned her for the Cullens and then abandoned her again for Jake. She refers to this as going over to the dark side when it's like, mate, you're the one who has been a knob the entire time you've known Jessica. I would not want to be your friend either if you had treated me the way that you treated Jessica. And the fact is, last time that you went out with Jessica, you acted like a complete psycho and got on that guy's motorbike, that complete stranger's motorbike, and scared the shit out of your mate. Do you know what I mean? She's got, like, no awareness of how her behaviour, like, looks to other people. It's crazy. She goes to the meadow that she went to with Edward in the first book, and there is Laurent, who was one of James's lackeys from the previous book, and seeing him, you know, dredges up all these memories for Bella, and we find out that in the entire time that they've been gone, Bella hasn't even thought of any of the Cullens. She won't think of, like, their names. She won't think of anything to do with them because it's just too painful. And I think that, okay, maybe at first, yes, these things are painful and we might take a little bit of time to ourselves to try and remove ourselves from the situation and to try and make that pain less. Okay, but after a certain amount of time, to just completely block off anything in your life that is going to remind you of this person that you've lost, it's just a really unhealthy way to live, and you're going to spend your life avoiding things and people and situations because you don't want to get into a point where you're going to remember them. And the thing is, the longer you avoid it, the longer it's going to hurt, right? Like, the more you expose yourself to things that remind you of them, the less it's going to hurt eventually, at least in theory. I don't know how that would work for Bella. I don't think Stephanie Meyer would let her get away with getting over Edward, but the thing is that it's teenage girls who are reading this book, right? And we don't want, we really don't want to be advocating this behaviour for so long, really. We just want to be telling them that time will heal. And also, don't use one boy to get over another boy, please, which is the other message that I'm getting from this book. It's just not a healthy overview that we are getting of teenage relationships here. Stephanie, I'm sorry, I feel like you have failed in this department. We all know that the werewolves come along to protect Bella from the evil vampire man, and she makes eye contact with one of the wolves who enter the clearing, right? And she's like, as it stared at me, I suddenly thought of Jacob. This isn't fucking subtle, Stephanie. It's just not subtle. It's not. I don't know what else to say about it apart from the fact that it's just not subtle. Thank you. It's very obvious that Jacob is a werewolf now if we did not know it anyway from the clues that you gave us in the last book. We didn't need this. We didn't need this. She beats us over the head with these concepts and we don't need it. Bella talks to Charlie about Jacob's concerns about Sam Yulee and his cults because she's concerned that he has joined them, right? And Charlie explains to her that Sam Yulee and his gang are, like, well respected around the res, and there's nothing to worry about. And then he goes on to say about the fact that there are two like dead hikers or two missing hikers who have probably been killed by these giant wolves that have been seen around the area. He says, look, I really have to go. Don't worry about Jake, Bella. I'm sure it's nothing. And Bella, immediately distracted from the two dead people, says, fine, I said curtly, frustrated as his words reminded me of the more urgent crisis at hand. Bye. The more urgent crisis of her mate having new friends as opposed to these two fucking dead people. Shut up, Bella. Shut up. Bella runs into one of Jacob's old friends, Quill, who's not yet been indoctrinated into Sam's cult. He's talking really fearfully about it, like Jacob was in the past, and he says, Jacob didn't want to be a part of this cult. I don't understand what could change him. He stared at me, his face frightened. I don't want to be next. It's more fate versus choice, right? Because really, once the guys discovered that they're werewolves, there's no reason why they really have to join the pack. In Stephanie Mayland, everybody's got this role that they're supposed to fit into, right? Everybody has a role in the universe, everybody has a purpose. And the werewolves have no choice but to be part of this pack. And it is a cult, bro, it is. Even though it's nowhere near as bad as, like, I don't know, actually. Even though it's not a cult in the way that Bella thought that it was, it is still a cult, and it is still fucking shitty for these werewolves. And we're going to go on to find out more about the werewolf lore in the Twilight universe. And it's fucked. You do not want to be a werewolf in this universe. I fucking love werewolves. I would love to be a werewolf. Fuck being a werewolf in Stephanie Mayland. Bella finally gets to speak to Jacob, and it's like he's had a personality transplant or been replaced by a pod person. Okay, and I've got some theories about it, but let's read about his reaction first, because I'm very excited for you to meet the new Jacob, who we're all gonna hate, okay? What are you doing here, Bella? Jacob growled. It was his expression that made him almost completely unrecognizable. The open, friendly smile was gone like the warmth in his eyes altered to a brooding resentment that was instantly disturbing. There was a darkness in Jacob now, like my son had imploded. What do you want? Jacob demanded, his expression growing more resentful as he watched the play of emotion across my face. I was like, why does being a werewolf make him so hateful towards Bella? Like, nothing's changed, and even if he has to distance himself from her, he could just do it in a nice way. He doesn't have to be a dick about it, right? And then I realised, he knows at this point that she was shagging Edward Cullen and that Edward Cullen was a vampire. Maybe Jake's just straight up disgusted that his best friend turned out to be a necrophile this entire time. Because it's one thing that Jacob is like, he changes into an animal, right? Because that's like, first of all, temporary, and he's still alive. Whereas like, I don't know how cool I would be with finding out that one of my friends was essentially loving up on a dead guy. So through this conversation with Jacob, it comes out that his beef is with the fact that he now believes that the Cullens are vampires. He doesn't say it in so many words, but she kind of puts it together. He's like, why are you blaming them for this behavior? And he's like, I'm blaming them because they fucking exist. And she's like, there is no need for this hatefulness towards them. Like, what the fuck? But, you know, we do go on to find out that it's because the vampires are around that Jacob and his mates have to go through this transformation in the first place. Like, they could have completely normal lives if there were no vampires in the vicinity. And so, considering how shitty it is to be a werewolf in this universe, which we will get to eventually, I promise, I would probably hate the fucking Cullens too, just for being there and for making me have to live this fucking stupid, fucked up life that I now lead. Jacob starts getting angry, and we all know that, like, anger in early werewolves can trigger the transformation, and it's dangerous to be around them when they're like that. And Edward, the hallucination of Edward that Bella keeps having, appears, and he's like, don't push him, Bella. Bitch, how the fuck do you know? If Bella is not aware that Jacob is a werewolf by now, and you are but a product, a figment of Bella's imagination, then how the fuck do you know that it's dangerous to get him angry? Let Bella rile up the werman. Let her get her face ripped off a little bit. She really has been acting like a head case for this entire book, and I feel like we need a little bit of retribution right now. I feel like that would not go amiss. Bella asks why Sam won't let Jake have other friends, which is really rich coming from her considering what this entire argument is about, but she does bring up a good point. As much as I understand keeping the werewolf thing a secret from people would be a good idea, I think that once you get your anger and things under control, it shouldn't stop you from having a life outside of the reservation, right? I don't understand that once you are in this cult, once you are a werewolf, you've pretty much just got the pack in this universe, and you're not allowed to stray outside of that unless, like, you imprint, okay? There's you and your family and the pack. And that's it. I just don't understand why that has to be the case, especially as we go on to learn that the werewolves aren't these completely out of control angry creatures that they're made out to be in the beginning. Bella is fucking desperate to get Jacob back on side, getting back into her life, and so she starts motor mouthing, okay? She says, I'm sorry that I couldn't before. I I wish I could change how I feel about you, Jacob. I was desperate, reaching, stretching the truth so far that it curved nearly into the shape of a lie. Maybe I would change, I whispered. Maybe if you gave me some time. Just don't quit on me now, Jake. I can't take it. Bitch! She's actually just implied that maybe if you keep hanging around me for long enough, I might pity you and fucking sleep with you or something. I don't know. I don't know what exactly she's implying here. But it's fucking mean and it's manipulative. And it's bang on Bella, you know? I'd thought Jake had been healing the hole in me. Or at least plugging it up, keeping it from hurting me so much, but I'd been wrong. He'd just been carving out his own hole. So now that I was riddled through like Swiss cheese. Like I tried so hard to be mature reading that. Should we do it again? Riddled through like Swiss cheese. Poetic, Mayor, honestly. Then he looked at my face. A kind of horrified recognition registered in his expression. I tried to feel my face from the inside out to know what he was seeing. My face felt empty and cold, and I realised what it would remind him of. Say face again. Say face again, bitch! Chapter 12. Through dreams, it is implied that Bella knows subconsciously that Jacob is a werewolf based on, you know, the story that he told her last year or whenever it was, and basic context clues that the rest of us have put together already, but consciously, she is so thick and it takes her chapters, it takes her days to figure it out, even though Jacob is being really, really fucking obvious about it. Jake is just as frustrated about this as I am. And he says, maybe it'll come back to you. I guess I understand why you only remember the one story. Me too. It's like, what, so you remember every detail of him telling you about the vampires, but you can't remember the one little itty bit where it was like, yeah, my ancestors literally turned into wolves. Fuck off, Bella. I'm so sick of you that I've become human again. Eventually, Bella realizes what the fuck is going on, and she's like, you're a wolf boy, and he's like, yeah, finally. And she's asking him about it, and he's like, listen, I am so tightly bound. You cannot imagine how tightly I am bound, by which he means obviously you have to obey alpha orders and not tell anybody about being a werewolf and stuff, which he's half failed on. Bella's like, for me, this was all essentially voluntary. I protected the Cullens' secret out of love, unrequited but true. For Jacob, it didn't seem to be that way. Jacob doesn't want to be here. He doesn't want to be in this gang. He doesn't want to be a werewolf. He doesn't want to be a slave to his emotions in the way that this transformation has made him. And yet, he just fucking has to deal with it because there are vampires nearby, and some guys, years and years and centuries ago, decided to protect the land from vampires. For some reason, he's got to make up for that promise. It just sucks. It sucks. I feel bad for the werewolves in this story, and I feel like they are treated somewhat as like villains. They are treated somewhat as being like immoral compared to the Cullens, to the vampires, and I feel like if you're actually reading the story, it's actually just really sad for them, especially some of the others when we get to them. You all know who I'm talking about, but I'm not going to mention it yet. So they're finishing up their talk. Jacob says, look, I've got to go, but can you do something for me? And Bella's like, sure. And he says, at least call me if you don't want to see me again. Let me know if it's like that. What, like you did, Jake, when you woke up and found out you were a werewolf and then just completely abandoned her out of some sense of deuces to a guy that you hated a week ago. He had the deuces to the Alpha Command or whatever, I get it, but it's a double standard, right? It is a double standard for him to turn around and say that to her. I'm dying on this hill, fuck it. We're gonna finish it up. Bella spends some time ruminating on the fact that her best friend is now a werewolf and what that means for him. And she says, but Jacob, who was just Jacob and nothing more than that. Jacob, my friend, Jacob, the only human I'd ever been able to relate to. And he wasn't even human. I fought the urge to scream again. What did this say about me? By all means, Bella. Make this about yourself. Everyone else around you is dealing with life or death situations. Your best mate turns into a fucking animal every time he gets a little bit pissed off. And you're like, this means that I'm a freak. I am so sick of Bella's shit. Like, I need a break, bro. I need to get out of this fucking... It's me doing my werewolf transformation into a pissed off ex-Twilight fan. I'm gonna leave that for today. I hope you have enjoyed me slowly losing my mind over the fact that Bella Swan's tits. We will continue next time. See you then.